Turn my mic on. Hello everyone, welcome to another Florida Native Plant Society Lunch and Learn. I'm your host, Valerie Anderson, the Director of Communications and Programming for the Florida Native Plant Society. This is a special presentation. I try not to present too often because I want to have lots of different voices here and lots of different expertise. But I recently gave this presentation on the bromeliads of split oak, and split oak is a forest in Central Florida that has almost all of the species that are have been vouchered for Central Florida. So I wanted to make sure that this information got to a wider audience. I have some plants for you to show, and then I have my camera set up here so we can go through a little bit of keying of these species. But before we get started, another project that we've been working on has been our annual conference. So every year we have a conference. Unfortunately, since COVID, we've had to have virtual conferences out of an abundance of caution. And then this year, again, we are having a virtual conference, but also 3 in-person field days around the state. And we have lots of information about those field days on our website, fnps.org/conference. And you must register for the virtual conference before you can register for any of the field days. We're having one in Sanford area. All of these are just areas. So we're calling them either the Sanford field days or the Central Florida field days. And then we're having one in Southwest Florida in Naples. And then we're also having one in Tallahassee, the Panhandle. Of course, there will be field trips pretty broadly around that area. So here's our conference graphic made by the lovely Marjorie Shropshire. And please, registration is open right now. Obviously the virtual conference is not going to fill up, and even if we go over the amount of people we have purchased for our conference platform, we can always up that. But the field days are in fact very limited. There are some field trips that just have like 10 slots available. I mean, most of them have 20 or 30, and then some of the socials and stuff are like 60, depending on the location. So I would recommend you check those out. You can look at a map and lists of the field days on our website, fnps.org/conference. And I will just put that in the chat right now for you guys to link to at your leisure. Okay, so hopefully this works. And it's not showing my video. Oh, there we go. Okay. I move myself over here. Is my audio okay? This is my new little Rode wireless microphone. So if you're having any issues with the sound, please let me know. Okay, so we have 11 documented native species of bromeliads here in Central Florida, and I'll show you a map in the next slide of the Central Florida area that I'm referring to. But it's basically Orange, Osceola, Lake, Seminole, Volusia, Brevard, Sumter, Indian River, Pinellas, Hernando, Hillsborough, and Polk counties for my purposes here. So this graphic here on the left is from the University of South Florida Atlas of Vascular Plants. And if you search by genus, it produces a list like this, and you can specify what nativity status, if you want things that are endangered, and then which counties. So that's literally just the search I went through. So all of our native bromeliads are in the Tillandsia genus, and Tillandsia is named after Swedish botanist Elias Tillandz. And Google Translate says, I speak a little Swedish, so this was familiar to me. It means to the land, and legend has it that Mr. Tillandz, he was teaching in Turkey, and he took like a really long boat ride, and he got so violently seasick that he decided that he was only walking from then on, and he took like some really long walks, like back to Sweden from Turkey, which is kind of ironic because, these plants are, they can live on the ground. They just don't really like impact. They don't like, people stepping on them or getting eaten, and they're often, in the canopy. So it's a bit funny. So here's the list. On the left here, I have the species that are either state threatened or state endangered, ST for state threatened, and then SE for state endangered, bolded here. So obviously a nice list with lots of scientific names, and then one hybrid, which I've heard maybe can be found locally, but it's currently only vouchered in Central Florida for Indian River County. Okay, so here's a map I made of the general Central Florida area and the counties that I mentioned before. Oh, good, and people saying that my sound is good. Thank you, guys. Okay, so let's get started. I have these, we're going in alphabetical order, so that's hopefully that works for you guys. So Tillandsia balbisiana is the northern needleleaf air plant. It's state threatened and it's often found in cypress swamps. You can see this photo on the right is by Danny Gooding in Split Oak of this beautiful plant. It has like a nice bulb, and then this is a really nice purple color. So this is mostly a South and Central Florida plant, and then it has a community in Mexico in the Oaxaca area. And so, okay, just so you can get some orientation. So I'm gonna have two photos, maybe sometimes three on each slide. I'll have the photo credits, and then this middle map here is gonna be the Plants of the World online map by Kew Botanical Gardens, and then this map here is going to be produced by the University of South Florida Atlas of Vascular Plants. So you can recreate these maps, you can go look at these species. If you just put the species name in either Plants of the World online, some people call it powwow or powwow, and then so you just like powo.q.org, and then this is just search the USF Atlas of Vascular Plants, USF, Florida.plant, they've recently changed the name, florida.plantatlas.usf.edu. Okay, and so that will pull all of the vouchered specimens in Florida from a database, and not all of those voucher specimens are going to be available for you to look at. And not all of the herbaria in Florida have all of their specimens connected to this database. So just because you don't see it in a county, like say here, I think it's like Hardy County or something, doesn't mean it's not there. It just means that nobody has taken the time to press it. And if you're interested, we have a plant pressing demo in one of our Lunch and Learns, which I should have linked ahead of time and had available for you guys, but I don't have it ready just yet. Okay, so our next species is Tillandsia bartramii, Bartram's air plant, named after William Bartram, obviously. And this is more of a central and North Florida species. You don't see it often in South Florida. Again, with this rosy flower spike, and it also has a population in Mexico. Okay, so now we're starting with species of Tillandsias that are affected by, oops, let me move my, actually we can just get rid of me, that are affected by the weevil. So you can see in the top right of my slide, I have this weevil here. You know, it just looks like maybe a bug if you're not familiar with bugs, but Bromeliad folks call this the evil weevil. And this weevil eats plants specifically with large fleshy bases. So Tillandsia fasciculata, cardinal air plant, and then giant air plant, Tillandsia utriculata, and then the hybrid that will be our last slide, because there's so much to eat there in the center. And so the part that eats it, the developmental stage of the weevil that eats the air plants is not that one that I'm showing. It's the juvenile, and I'll show that in the last slide. So basically, the air plants that are endangered in Florida are, for the most part, endangered, yes, partially because of poaching and development, wetland drainage, cutting of cypress swamps, but also due to this weevil, because it just chomps the centers out and they fall apart and fall on the ground. So this is state endangered. It's called the cardinal air plant, and it just has these giant, massive pink flower spikes. And the leaves do tend to be reddish, although I wanted to point out, let me see if I can. I wanted to point out that this is a species that has, here we go. This species that has potentially varieties as recognized by Luther in 1983. So if you're looking at this species and you're having a hard time identifying it by gestalt, it might be because you're looking at a different variety, if it's densus spicata or clavis spicata or fasciculata. And again, this is like a central South Florida plant. And then it has this wide distribution throughout the Caribbean and South America, which is really cool. Okay, so that's that's a pretty substantial air plant. I don't have one on me, I'm sorry guys. But now we're getting back into the smaller air plants. So Tillandsia floridana is an endemic air plant, which means it only occurs in Florida and it has a Central Florida level of endemism. It does sometimes grow in these multiples, and it has a really nice pink flower spike. And it does have a little bit thicker leaf bases than you might see in Cetaceae or some of the other species. I'm just going to check the chat to make sure everything's okay. Yes, the evil weevil. Thanks, Jeff. The weevil is non-native. So the weevil was imported accidentally. Somebody just told me the story, but I don't remember it. And so it was imported, and there's so much for it to dine on. There's many non-native, there's lots of bromeliad nurseries, especially in South Florida, but also Central Florida. And then we used to have these just huge populations and dense populations. So, you know, like many plants in a small area of specifically the giant air plant, which we'll get to later. I think I can. This may be a giant air plant. I'm not an expert. And then I also have probably a giant air plant baby. Anyway, so we used to just have loads of these just all over the state, and the weevil just decimated it. So we're sort of in so we had this huge population, and now the weevil's eaten so much that there's not so much for it to eat right now. And the populations are more scattered, and so there's less of the weevil around. Okay. Yes, Ada says we have a research group at the Enchanted Forest in Titusville that is studying the Tillandsia and the weevil. FNPS has given this group a grant in the past, and they've presented on our Lunch and Learns and at our conference. So this is really important to us to prevent the extinction of the species, and we're really grateful that the folks at the Enchanted Forest Sanctuary are working on it. Okay, so I went through floridana. It has these really thick seeds, which is cool. Yeah. All right, so this is Tillandsia paucifolia, a potbelly air plant. This is particularly cool. You see, I put furthest north observation of the species to date. And so I said that because that's in Split Oak. So we have Christian Horn here found it, and I may have a photo of it also in a different cypress dome. That's the photo that I used in the intro graphic. But that has not been confirmed. And really the only way to confirm it is to see it flowering and get more information about that. So species is really cool. Distribution, Central America, South America, and then over in Baja area. So this photo on the left here, This photo on the left here is in Everglades National Park, and then that's up in Split Oak in Orange County portion. So that would be the first observation in Orange County of the species. And it's cool. It's like this really chunky, thick leaf base species. Okay. So here we are in the more common land of the common Tillandsias. So we have, is everybody seeing my slides change? Because I'm not, I'm behind. Okay, here we go. Okay, there we go. Sorry, my preview. So I have like a bunch of screens going on. So my preview of what was happening was not showing me updating, but it seems like you guys are caught up in the video. I mean, in the live stream. Okay, so Tillandsia recurvata is your common ball moss. I have a ball moss right here. And it's a very common, very resilient plant. You will see this on power lines. You'll see this on chain link fences. You'll see this on people's mailboxes. It's not killing any trees. Trees that have softer, spongier, more diseased bark tend to be better hosts for, hosts in the non-parasitic way, i.e. it's a soft, wet place for the seeds to land and germinate, and the roots have a better time penetrating the bark when the plant has some sort of issue. But just because you see this doesn't mean, or this, Just because you see either ball moss or Spanish moss doesn't mean the tree has a problem. I mean, if you see a lot of it, the tree probably has a problem. But one or two, it's just like one or two mistletoe. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the tree. Doesn't mean you need to call a tree service to come clean your trees out. These are native, and they have many, many ecological benefits. So just leave them alone. And once we get to the keying portion of this presentation, we'll talk more. But this is one of the ones that's 2 ranked. So these other ones are spiral. They have the leaves are spiraled, and then this species is disticus, or 2 ranked. So I have my camera set up so that you guys can see that better. So ball moss has a pretty broad distribution, all the way very far south in South America, Mexico, not all of the southeast, but like Texas and Louisiana. Yeah, so it doesn't require super humid conditions to thrive. It doesn't really require much to thrive. Okay, now here is one of my favorites. This is southern needleleaf air plant, and I love this species because so the leaves can be kind of reddish, and they tend to be in clusters on oak trees, and when the sun hits them just right, it is absolutely gorgeous. And so this is one of the species that you can identify by gestalt or general look. So this is the most observed bromeliad species, native bromeliad species in Florida on iNaturalist, because it is easy to ID. It has really thin needle-like leaves, and they're often pretty red. Now sometimes Floridana can be a little bit red, and it says pretty interesting distribution. You can see we've got Florida, Georgia, and then Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Haiti, and then Central America here, and then over on the west, South America, and then over west of Central America. And then it's in Florida, you're not going to see it in North Florida, Jacksonville, but I mean, maybe it's climate limited, and it's been in Georgia, so no particular reason why it can't grow there in North Florida. And it also has these big chunky seeds. Okay, we have a question in the chat. How much is too much ball moss and Spanish moss? Also, by the way, not mosses. And this one is not Spanish. They're both native. So how much is too much? Well, maybe there's something going on with your front maple, Julie. I mean, I know where you live. So I probably, and I've seen your house. So really, probably your maple's not doing particularly well. So it would cover your whole maple because, it's a red maple, and you're not in anywhere near a wetland. Yeah. So in this case, I would say in Julie's case, probably the tree's not particularly healthy. And that's why such maintenance is required to remove so much. Okay, I'll come by. I'll bring you some fruit. So I don't know. I can't really say, oh yeah, that's too much, or this is, you can't have any, or 20%. I don't have that information, so sorry guys. Okay, so moving on to the Tillandsia simulata. Simulata? I don't know. It's simulating. But it's not just for the Manatee River anymore. It's called Manatee River air plant, but it's all over Central Florida. Other people call it the Florida air plant, but you can't call it the Florida air plant because this one is a Florida air plant, Tillandsia floridana. So what are our choices for the common names here? Not very good choices, in my very humble opinion. So this is endemic air plant. It has a little bit more reddish than pink flower spike, and it has these long, strappy, sort of flippy leaves, and they're pretty stiff. Okay, and then here we've been discussing Spanish moss, and how Spanish moss hangs off of your trees and how it's beautiful. Did you know that it also flowers? Did you know that it was also non-native to Australia? So much good information about Spanish moss. So basically so we are all talking about flowering plants. We're talking about tillandsias. So just because it's called Spanish and it's called a moss, it is neither Spanish nor a moss. It does have chlorophyll, it does photosynthesize, and it's a flowering plant. And the flowers only flower at night. We have this lovely photo by Mary Kime of the beautiful green flowers, and it smells lovely. So if you're out walking under some live oak trees or other trees that are covered in Spanish moss and you smell a delicious smell in the evenings, it could be Spanish moss flowering. This has full Florida distribution throughout the Southeast, and then also South America, Central America, Texas, Louisiana, Alabama. Okay, now we're in giant air plant. We're back to giant air plant land. We're back in evil weevil territory, which is big, chunky air plant with big, luscious leaf bases that can easily get chomped by this weevil. It is state endangered. It is absolutely massive. Like, the photos do not do it justice. And so this one can be kind of hard to tell apart from the Tillandsia fasciculata, the giant wild pine. Because, you know, sometimes these leaves are just big, strappy, floppy things. It's really easy to tell, but sometimes they're kind of stiff and upwards, like this photo here on the left by Mary Kime. But when you can really tell is when it flowers. And this plant only flowers once and it dies, like a century plant. But it makes loads of seeds, and you can propagate this yourself. I recommend you take the seeds, you pick up the seeds, and you find a suitable branch or some bark that has fallen off a live oak tree, and then I would spray the bark a little bit with water if you have like a little sprayer, and then just put the seeds on the bark, and then spray again, and then make sure they're in the grooves. And so that's what my friend John Boardman is a member of the Central Florida Bromeliad Society and just presented to our Pine Lily chapter this week. And that's why I have so many of these on the desk, which you'll get to see with my nice camera here in a moment when I feel like turning on the light here. This is about a 3-year-old, probably giant air plant from a plant that flowered in his yard. And so you can see, instead of being pink or reddish flowers, and instead of having a dense spike, it's huge. I mean, could like 5 feet. I mean, the spike can be absolutely massive. I have one in my yard right now. It's just the center, and it's elongating, looks like an asparagus, and it's just absolutely huge. So, okay, and then this is when I expanded the definition of Central Florida to include Indian River County, because when I was doing this presentation initially, it was just split oak, and obviously that does not include Indian River County. So this is a natural hybrid between two fat-based tillandsias, Tillandsia balbisiana and Tillandsia fasciculata. It also has a reddish flower spike. I can get up to 2 feet long, but it's not quite as big as Tillandsia fasciculata. So balbisiana is pretty small, and fasciculata can be pretty big. And it has a South Florida distribution, but is endemic to Florida. And it is also eaten by the weevil. So the weevil is not species specific. The weevil is big, juicy base specific. Okay, Ada is asking, when does a Spanish moss flower? I think it's in the summertime, but I would have to look it up for you guys. I'm sorry. Okay, and now we're in evil weevil land. This is a photo in Split Oak Forest that I took myself of a giant air plant on the ground. I did not scatter these leaves anywhere. And it looks terrible. It's really depressing to see. And then there's the weevil larva in a leaf base. So I saw this, I was sad. I picked up the plant, and then I found this weevil. So people are asking, what's the best way to combat the weevil? You can use pesticides on it. I don't know that FNPS has a policy on what people should do with the ones in their yard. You know, if you should pesticide the centers, or if you should not do that. I know Enchanted Forest is practicing different methods, and I'm just gonna refer back to that presentation since I'm not the expert. I've just observed the weevil, and I think it's is it imidacloprid? It might be. I think that's what he said. It was imidacloprid. But basically, you put something that kills beetles in the base, and then the beetles can't attack the bromeliad in the center. And so Enchanted Forest Sanctuary is working on, they're caging them. They're looking at genetics for the ones that live in Central and South America. Can you find weevils? Oh, the question is, can you find weevils before it's too late? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. Sorry, guys. I will, after I get done with the keying demo, then I can link to that video. Okay, so let's go to the camera there and turn on the light. Actually, you guys are going to want to see the okay. All right, so here we have, this is the flora of the southeastern US. This is Alan Weekly's publication. And oh wow, I'm so big here. Okay, so it's basically a absolutely massive PDF document, and it's sorted by family and then by species. So I know this is not going to be very big for you guys, but I don't know if I want to make it too much bigger. You can't see the whole thing. Oops. Okay, here we go. So we're in Tillandsia. So here we have, yes, there's an unkeyed waif, Tillandsia ionantha. But so we're going to start with the top of the key. I don't know if anybody has experience keying plants, but there's a lot of technical terms. In my opinion, unnecessary technical terms make it hard for people to learn more, but you can just Google these terms. So I Googled disticus because I didn't remember what it meant because it's been a long time since I got my degree. So disticus basically means like this. So two ranked, or so let me switch over to the camera. So this guy here, you can see that there's a leaf on the left, and there's a leaf on the right. And then there's another leaf on the left that got chomped, and then a leaf on the right. Let's see if we can find a fatter specimen. See why they call it ball moss? Very much a ball situation. Okay, so leaf on the left, leaf on the right, leaf on the left, left, right. So two ranked. And so if we go back to the key, you can see leaves disticus. Okay, so you got a different thing. Leaves disticus or leaves spiral. So we just have, of the disticus, we only have recurvata and usnioides. Okay, so everything else is spiral. Okay, so here, let me pull back up the camera. I need a camera person. So I don't know if you've ever really looked at Spanish moss, but here is your chance. Hi, are you going to focus? I guess we can go down here. Okay. So we have leaf, leaf, leaf. So two ranked rather than spiral. Let's see this. Spiral. This guy. Spiral. This guy? Spiral. Okay. Oh, a good question. What is the gray stuff on the leaves? Okay, so let me switch back over to the right screen. It says leaves finely lepidote. So let's hey, look, it's you guys. Let's Google what lepidote means. Well, the meaning of lepidote is any of various low-growing small-leaved rhododendrons. Is this a rhododendron? No, not a rhododendron. But the rhododendrons have tiny scales on the underside of the leaves. So it's probably a scale. Let's see. Wiktionary says, from the New Latin, lepidotus, covered with scales. From Ancient Greek, lepitodos, covered with scales. From whatever, lepis, scale, flake, shell, husk. Okay, covered with scurfy scales. Wow, scurfy, fascinating. Okay. So Julie asked earlier if it was possible to key out a plant without it being in flower. And yes, it's possible, but it certainly depends on the plant. And it's pretty difficult when the species is juvenile. So because a lot of the, if you can see, once we know it's not Tillandsia recurvata or Tillandsia usnioides, like this guy, then we start to have to deal with how wide is the leaf at its base. Is the leaf sheath conspicuously inflated at the base? How wide is it at the base? Which that width is going to change based on how mature the plant is. Or if the plant is a little babe, then it's just going to be too small and it's not represented in the key here. But if you go down, if you sort of scan the key, you can see that in some cases you can get to species with just the leaf sheath information, just the measurements of the leaf sheath. This one does include whether the corolla is lavender versus the difference between Bartramii and Cetaceae, which was pointed out in the chat that these are easy to confuse, is that in Cetaceae, the leaves are finely lepidote, and in Bartramii, the leaves are densely and coarsely lepidote and appear gray, whereas in Cetaceae, they appear green or reddish. And in Cetaceae, the floroblasts are green or reddish, but in Bartramii, or Floridana, they're rose or red. So keying is not for the faint of heart or the people who are easily frustrated. But if you are out of time or don't have a lot of patience, you can always get to one of these, post on iNaturalist, say, hey, I think maybe it's either Bartramii and Floridana, and see if somebody helps you out with that. Or Florida and Ecosystematics or a similar place like that. Okay. So since we have some small ones that, are probably not keyable, I do have a mature specimen. So I'll switch back to the camera, and could I set this up so that I put the camera up here? You know what, I could do that. Okay, give me a second, guys. Okay, so we've got the key, and then we've got the camera here. Okay, and I'll have to move this over slightly. Okay, so we've got this guy. Let's just have a look. We do have a flower. Sorry, I didn't I practiced this a little beforehand, but I didn't practice it extensively. So we have a flower. It is pink, and it is a bit shorter than the leaves. Okay, the leaves are pretty stiff. They're, pretty stiff, and they are definitely thicker at the base. They're not really a ton I mean, they're a lot thicker because, the ends are just very small, but it's not like this big fat thing. So let's look at our key. Okay, leaves are narrowly linear or they're broader. Okay, what's our measurements? We have 1 to 5 millimeter wide or 10 millimeter wide in Floridana when measured at mid-length. Or we have 6 to 33 millimeters wide when measured at mid-length. So, okay, if you're following along at home, let me just point out, I'm going through this 3 here. I'm trying to decide between, so we went through one, it's not Disticus, and it's not in this Diaphoranthema, I have never said that word before, subgenus. It is definitely in subgenus Tillandsia, so we've already made that determination just because of how it looks and that the leaves are not Disticus, they are spiral. Okay, so we're here. So once we said, okay, we're done with 1, okay, we're in 3. So we're deciding between huzzah and huzzah. Okay, so where is mid-length? Whoop, ball moss down. Okay, here's a nice leaf. Here's a nice leaf, and mid-length is, say, about here. And I wonder if I can zoom in for you guys. Ooh, nice. Okay, so this is about 5 millimeters mid-length. One to 5 millimeters long. Okay, so we're probably not in here because that's 6 to 35 millimeters, and this is 1 to 5 millimeters, or 10 in Tillandsia floridana. Okay, well, I mean, we definitely didn't get 10. Maybe we should measure a few more at mid. Where's mid? I mean, I would say we're still below 5. I think these are definitely all below 5 millimeters wide. Yeah, that's below 5. Oh, sorry. That's below 5. This is definitely below 5. Sorry about my hands. Maybe I could place this camera a little. Okay. Okay. So if it's narrowly linear, 1 to 5 millimeter wide when measured at mid-length, then here's our list. Let me put this guy down. Okay, so here's our list. Paucifolia, pruinosa, simulata, Cetaceae, Bartramii, or Floridana. Okay, so once we're done with 3, we go on to 4. So 4 is leaf sheaths conspicuously inflated at the base, 1.5 to 3.5 centimeters wide at the base. Okay, so let's just take a moment. Okay, what's the leaf base? Well, okay, here's the leaf tip down to the base. So here's the base. We have some old leaves hanging out. Old leaves. And then live leaf bases. Okay, so they are definitely wider at the base. Now, conspicuously inflated. I don't know. I don't know if it's conspicuously inflated. Also, what's escape? Okay, well, I mean, I've eaten a garlic scape. In the purest sense, out of a smooth stem without leaves or branches, a scape is a single internode. It might comprise an entire peduncle with just one flower. Okay, I hate to say it, but that is not very helpful. Oh, asking what this key is. This is the flora of the southeastern US. And I will post a link to and I'm posting that link in the, there we go. It's from University North Carolina Botanical Garden? Yes, North Carolina Botanical Garden. Flora of the southeastern United States. Let me just pull it over here so you can see. Flora of the southeastern United States. I'll move this guy. So, see here, North Carolina Botanical Garden, and you have to fill out a thing in order to get it. So save it to your computer, it's important. Okay. Since I'm still not really sure what a scape is, let's continue with the leaf sheaths. Are they inflated at the base? Is it pseudobulbous? And how wide are they? Okay, well, I can measure how wide they are. I mean, we're at least a centimeter. I'm just gonna take this off. Okay, that's like 1.5 centimeters. I'm still here, guys, I'm just thinking. Okay, so our choices are Tillandsia paucifolia, which we looked at, the potbelly air plant, and pruinosa, which is not in Florida. So I'm gonna say, as for number 4, we're gonna go to leaf sheaths slightly or not at all inflated. So I'm hoping that by inflated, they mean like thick at the base, like succulent kind of. And this is definitely not that. I'm gonna do a little deconstruction. Sorry plant, sorry. So you can see it's kind of like a boat, and I would not say that this is inflated at all. So that brings us to 6 here. So I guess this means that this plant is not pseudobulbous, which that's fine with me. It's pretty skinny plant. Leaf sheaths narrowly elliptic, slightly inflated, 1.2 to 2 centimeters wide, or broadly elliptic to triangular, flat, 0.8 to 2.5 centimeters wide. I feel like I need to phone a friend here. Okay, we have the leaf sheaths are elliptic. Well, I mean, they're definitely not triangular. They do have like a little keel, it looks like, in the center. Let's see if that's, that one kind of has a little keel. Has a little keel, this one has a little keel, but nobody's talking about that in this key. Okay, so we said that this was you this leaf sheath again. That's about a little over 1.5 centimeters. So that means we're in the range for both of them, for both sixes. Let's look at some more photos for Tillandsia simulata. Okay, so I mean we've got a pink flowering stalk. Okay, I would probably be okay with simulata. What else do we have? It's not Cetaceae, for sure. Let's look at Bromeliaceae. Okay, in elliptic leaves, a single wide middle portion tapers as it approaches the apex or base. Okay, but if it's the leaf sheaths are elliptic, does that mean that they're referring to the cross section of the leaves? Okay, well, I would say we can say that this one is either probably most likely simulata, or if we want to go through, if it could be one of the other number sixes, if this is, we could talk about how lepidote this is. Is it finely lepidote or densely and coarsely lepidote, appearing gray? I mean, it's pretty gray. The leaves are pretty gray. The scales are pretty thick. I think I've done some solid rubbing on these guys, but I would say it's pretty thick. And the floral bracts are definitely rose here. Okay, we can count the leaves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So we have 20 leaves. Not helpful. Let's count another one. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, 15. So not over ½ centimeter wide at mid-length. Okay, definitely not over ½ centimeter wide at mid-length. Inflorescence simple or one pinnate, single pinnate, with 1 to 5 branches. Okay, so I would say we have successfully narrowed this guy down, or girl, or whatever, down to 2 species, Tillandsia bartramii here, or Tillandsia simulata. And that depends on what is meant by whether the leaf sheaths are narrowly elliptic or broadly elliptic and whether or not they're inflated. Okay, let me get this light off here. Okay, so thank you guys for joining me for this Tillandsias of Central Florida. We have a lot of pretty expert people in here in the chat here, Paula White. Oh, I did want to address an early question. Randy Snyder and Mary Kime asked if they should be putting air plants back into bushes or trees. So as long as you're not taking them. So if you're seeing a plant in a natural area, do not take the plant. But if the plant is fallen on the ground and it's an area with foot traffic, the best thing for that plant would be to get it back up so it doesn't get stepped on, because it's, they're not going to survive if they get stepped on. Now, you don't want it constantly falling out of the tree. So, use your best judgment. If you can take the plant and say wedge it against maybe a vine so that it is nicely wedged. But if you're just placing it in the crotch of a tree or in a hole, it may not do particularly well. So please consider the placement of these. And then if you're, most of these fell out because of the hurricane in my residential neighborhood. So yeah, this was from my neighborhood, this is from my neighborhood, this is from my neighborhood. So, I knock on my neighbor's doors and I ask them if they care about their air plants. Hey, did you know that you have a cool air plant that fell out of your tree? And they're like, oh, I'm gonna put it in the, the bin for the trash people to take away. And I say, well, can I have it? And so I take it, and I have a gun, like a gun for caulk, and it has liquid nails in it. So you buy liquid nails, and I have twine. And so I take the plants, and I orient the plant so that it's, especially the ones with the thick leaf bases here, I orient it, up and down. And then I find a place where it can get some rain. So you don't want it fully shadowed by the top branch of anything, because then its little inner cup won't be able to fill up with water. And then of course, even if, they're not the fleshy ones, you still don't want them to, not get any water at all. I mean, you'll be standing there with a hose watering your air plants in your tree, not the best thing ever. And so just orient it, in a natural orientation, and then put the liquid nails, try not to cover the entire area where the roots are going to come out, because then it can't make new roots. So it doesn't need its roots for absorbing water and nutrients. It can absorb water and nutrients through its whole leaf. So it's okay if you put liquid nails on some of the roots, but just don't cover up the whole bottom of it. And then what I do is I stick that I sort of orient it and see, oh, is it going to sit there? You know, how much glue can I get to cover the branch that I have? And then I put the liquid nails on. I'm wearing gloves because you get liquid nails in your hands and you're really sticky for a long time. And then stick it on the tree, and then I use twine. So I have pre-cut twine that would, you know, go around the whole tree just long enough to let it set. Because liquid nail sets in, you know, an hour or less than an hour, 15 minutes. But I just leave the twine on and let it sit there. And then I mean, I have ones that have been up since the hurricane and they're still alive, doing well. Okay. Is there any more questions about tillandsias, care, native ones? Anything else I can help you guys with? Oh, there's a question. Is there any hybrid between Tillandsia usnioides and Tillandsia recurvata? Not that I know of. Not that I know of. I don't recommend, I don't know if there's an organic pesticide that treats the beetles, so I can't recommend that. Thanks for your question, Cindy. A question, should you remove Spanish moss if the tree is covered in and the tree looks like it's dying? The Spanish moss is not killing the tree. It is just there because the tree is doing poorly. If you really want to save the tree and you do think that there's something else going on that you can change that's not just environmental conditions, that the reason why the tree might be dying and that the tree is going to be healthier in the future, and you're just going to remove it to give the tree a leg up, that's fine. You know, I'm not a big fan of keeping things alive that, you know, are not doing well. Plants, that is. You know, so the plant is maybe in the wrong place and you know, may not want to keep it. Susan asks, hey, I was given an air plant 10 or more years ago. They said it would die after it bloomed. If it's a native one, then yes, it's Tillandsia utriculata. That's the only native one that only blooms once. Now, if someone gave it to you, there are lots of bromeliads. There are lots and lots and lots of non-native bromeliads that people cultivate in Florida. So just because we didn't cover it in this particular lesson, this particular live stream, doesn't mean, you know, you can't see these other bromeliads that are non-native, and maybe somebody gave it to you. So my best recommendation for you is to join the Florida Native Plant Society, fnps.org/join. And you can join our members only Facebook group, and you can post a photo of the plant and we can help you ID it. Yes, I got that you were given the plant. And okay, so you got babies. That's good. That's good. Yeah, so anyways, yeah, if you can get us a photo, we can help you identify it. Yeah, but, you know, there may be other air plants that aren't native. And I'm not very familiar. I mean, I have joined the Central Florida Bromeliad Society and I have gone to their meetings. So I have seen non-native bromeliads, but I don't have enough information to know whether or not there are other non-native bromeliads in Florida that, you know, people might have growing, and whether they are the ones, whether there are any or multiple species that only bloom once. Okay, yes, and before you guys go, I'm gonna find you the video of the enchanted air plant. No. Crap. Sorry, I'm looking at my list of lunch and learns. Saving Florida's Bromeliads Conservation Program. There it is. Okay. All right, I posted that link to. Okay, so that link I just posted, that is the the Save Florida Bromeliads Conservation Project that Martha Passaro of the Enchanted Forest Sanctuary gave for us back in the day. Actually, it was quite a long time ago. It was a wonderful session and very informative. So if you want to know what they've been doing to prevent the extinction of this wonderful bromeliad species, go watch that Lunch and Learn, because she knows way more about it than I do, and she's really great. So, okay, you're a member, Susan. Awesome. Yeah, so please take a photo, post it in the members only Facebook group, and everyone, please remember to register for the conference. Get outside, get in nature, and thank you for your interest in Florida native plants and native plant communities. Have a great weekend.